disturb you. I'll see you soon.
I want to play a game.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Josh from late. Oh my God, I just messed up my own show.
Again?
This is Josh from Nightmare on Woodsboro Lake. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. I have Mr. Justin Welborn. How are we doing, my friend?
I'm great, man.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. I was super excited to have you on. So you're in quite a few movies that I've seen, and I was like, man, some of the characters you play were definitely interesting. I'm very interested to pick your brain a little bit because there's some very diverse characters that you've played.
I like to hear that. I try to make it relatively diverse rather than the same all around, one trick pony and all that. Don't want that.
Don't want to be typecast for sure.
Well, I play a lot of bad guys, so whether that's typecasting or not, but I would say that's okay with me, man. When I was a little kid, I either wanted to be an actor, a lawyer, or a villain, and I've turned out to be two of those things, and I'm not a lawyer, so.
There you go. So for many people, they'll know you from the Final Destination series,
right?
And you were in the Final Destination, so Final Destination 4. They kind of went a different route there and just were like, it's the Final Destination. So I threw together some questions because I like I said, you played quite a few different characters here. I've seen that you've been on like the Crazies. I really love that movie.
Right. Yeah, that was one of my first movies as well.
Very nice. And then I see that you've been in some television shows as well, like Justified, Godless, NCIS, Bones. So it looks like you've had your hand in a lot of cookie jars.
I keep eating cookies, man. If they keep feeding them to me, I'll eat them. That's what a career is made up of. But a couple seasons on Justified was really amazing, and really when I moved out to LA, I mean, like a lot of actors, I probably thought that most of it would be film, but actually most of it has turned out to be television, which in today's world is not really a bad thing, especially when we've got such great material on streaming networks and we can access those things whenever we want rather than just network TV, which I've done a lot of network TV. But that's a very different demographic than a lot of the shows that we are kind of raving about and enjoy in our own time, that I enjoy as well.
Yeah. No, we live in such a different age now. Like you said, you got all these streaming platforms. I know my wife and I are subscribed to I feel like 5 or 6 different streaming platforms. We don't really have regular television anymore.
I don't either. And actually, last night I went through and winnowed down to the ones that I'm really watching, because I was like, I'm spending like $40 on things that I only watch every once in a while. So, and you really, when you're talking about like a different age, I mean, we're really only talking about like 5-6 years that, not that these things have been available, but that they've taken over such a huge percentage of our attention span, of our entertainment. I mean, I moved to LA 13 years ago, and this was not the case. It was still movies and TV for the most part. And when I did Godless, things were, that was for Netflix, and there's still very little consideration contract-wise to the idea that you're on a streaming series. It's not paid the same as a lot of television. It's not paid like film, but it actually gets a lot more play. And so those contracts are being renegotiated, and things are really fluctuating a lot more than they have in even the last 20 years before that. That has essentially just been TV and film, and that's been it. I guess
Yeah.
cable is really what came through, and people watching things on the internet. But I mean, I don't really even watch things at home on my computer anymore. I simply stream them through my television, and that's really fascinating. I like being involved in that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I, that's great. I know, like for us, I have a lot of physical media at my house still. I have a lot of like
Oh, sure.
DVDs, Blu-rays, and like we bought a bunch of VHSs and found an old VHS player. We're like, hey,
Awesome. Yeah, I've got one in the garage just in case. And there's still like those tapes that, well, you're just never going to get rid of them. I mean, I've got cassette tapes. I have nothing to play that on. I've got all my DVDs that I don't generally use a lot of. They're all packed up. They're in the garage. I'm not going to get rid of them, but at the same time, I'm not as much of a collector as I used to be. It never seems the same as when you buy a movie and it's in my stuff. That you like own the movie. It's just not the same as owning something physical like that, which is probably why I still collect things like comic books and, that I've got other collections that I need something material. The fact that you own a digital movie is not the same as owning the Blu-ray or the Criterion collection or anything like that. Those still have a special meaning.
Yeah, and like you said, like you got like cassette tapes and CDs. Like cars nowadays, when you go and buy a car, I bought a car back in 2017. It doesn't have a CD player. It definitely doesn't have a cassette player. It has an aux cable port and a USB port and Bluetooth. I'm like, well, what if I want to play my CDs? What?
Yeah, well, you're gonna have to plug that into your aux cord and get with the times, bro.
I know. It's rough. I'm adjusting.
I hear you. I hear you.
So I threw together some really random questions, and my channel is mainly around horror. So I've got quite a few horror questions in there, and then I've got some ones that are not so horror, but
well, I'm a huge horror fan myself. I love horror fans. They're some of the most dedicated and interesting people that I've ever been around, and I'm glad to be part of that community. So I welcome your questions.
Awesome. So one thing I noticed, so in the Final Destination, like we kick off the movie at the racetrack, and just wondering, have you ever been to have you ever been to a car race before in real life?
Sure. Yeah, I'm from Georgia, man. If you haven't been to a NASCAR race, you really haven't lived at least one. I mean, I'm not a NASCAR fan, but yeah, sure, I've been to a NASCAR race. Yeah. And by the way, this the reason it was called The Final Destination is, of course, they were like, this is going to be the final one, and it is the first movie that was shot in 3D. And that is the difference in why they were like, this is going to be the one. And like My Bloody Valentine had come out and it was in 3D, but it was done in 3D in post. So everything we shot in that movie took so much longer than anything else because we had 3 cameras triangulating to make that 3D effect. And they were literally processing some of it on site. So that was why we called it The Final Destination, even though it's maybe not the best of the Final Destination movies by far. And I mean, I'm a big fan of 2. I love the next one, 5. But all the people involved, that movie will always have a huge place in my heart for doing it. And we were at an actual racetrack for the filming of it. We just didn't really have cars. At this one, they actually shot all the car sequences somewhere else. And we were in New Orleans sitting in those bleachers for a good 2 weeks while you'd have a PA with a green ball and a stick run by and we all go, woo, woo. I mean, that's movie making, man.
Yeah, a lot of movie magic going on.
Yeah.
I've actually never been to a racetrack. I live in Washington State. I mean, there is a track in Portland, Oregon that I've been there, but it wasn't on like a race day. It was like for Christmas. They did like this crazy thing where they lit everything up and they had all these like things going on, and like you would just go around the track and like see all this stuff that they had put out. But I've never seen a race. Maybe
Well, they're
eventually.
loud and it's crazy and a lot of drunk folks, a lot of very excited folks. And, like I would rather go to a race than a football game overall. That's just my pride. I mean, it's big, it's loud. It's one of the most ancient forms of entertainment. If you go back to chariot racing and things like that, there's just something really exciting about the fact that when the cars go by, you can feel it in your body. It's a presence of vibration and sound that just kind of blows you back. And yeah, there's nothing quite like it, man.
Nice. Yeah, I'm definitely, I want to at least once in my life. I want to at least go to one. I've mainly gone to like hockey games is like the most sports that I've actually gone to watch in a stadium or anything like that.
Wow. Well, I've never been to a hockey game. So again, from Georgia, we do have a hockey team that showed up, about 10 years ago, but it's really, hockey in Georgia is one of those things that only modern times can really bring us such luxuries as it is. But I would love to go. I love any game on ice that moves fast and there's a possibility of two human beings throwing down. So I really do enjoy that aspect of it.
Yeah, it gets crazy. I'll tell you, I went to my first one with my dad a long time ago, and there was like 3 fights that broke out in less than 5 minutes. And
chef's kiss. Yes.
And the one guy held the other guy up by the scruff of his jersey and kept beating the crap out of him and wouldn't let him hit the ice, because once they hit the ice, it's over. So he just kept going.
That's how you do it, man. I mean, I love hockey movies. Whether it be, Slapshot is just such a great movie. And even, going back to the days of the Mighty Ducks, I suppose it's just, the Bad News Bears on ice. But Paul Newman throwing down a hockey puck's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I got us off the topic, maybe.
Oh, no, you're good. And it's funny, I just recently had Jonathan Cherry on from Final Destination 2.
Right.
He played in a hockey movie called Goon.
Oh, right. I remember. Oh, yeah. I saw that a long time ago. Yeah, that one didn't really come up in my mind, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, with also with Sean William Scott. I mean, he was from Final Destination 1.
We've hauled him in. It's been a career starter for several. I mean, look at Chantel Van Santen, who was in Our Final Destination. She is just having an amazing career out there with shows like The Boys and For All Mankind, and she was amazing to really work with, and she really, I'm really happy for all the success that she's seen through the movie.
Heck yeah, I really enjoy all the Final Destination films. They're all like so different yet familiar. If you had a favorite kill or like a favorite death from any one of those films, which one would you think would be your favorite?
Oh, wow. I mean, overall, if you don't immediately go to the logging accident, the big kill in part 2, I mean, I lived in Washington too, and I've toured all around the West Coast. And if you've ever been behind a logging truck and seen that movie, you'll never be the same again. So it's pretty much, as a matter of fact, I think for some, it was just one of those suggested things. I was watching something on YouTube, and it was down there as one of the suggested videos, and I just watched just that part, and I was like, that still really plays, man. That's definitely not a single person. I mean, my favorite death is obviously my own in the Final Destination series, but as far as, big kills, nothing really beats that. I suppose the secondary one would be the bridge scene, the big bridge scene in part 5. That's pretty gnarly too. I think they were really trying to hail back to the good stuff of part 2 to get there. So I think that's a good secondary one. But yeah, the logging truck accident is pretty hardcore even to this day. Pretty much anything highway, because it seems all so probable. So many things in Final Destination are completely ridiculous. The roller coaster thing, we all kind of fear that, but like getting smushed on the freeway is right there all the time. So yeah.
Right.
that one.
Right. I know. I think I speak. Yeah, we could speak for everyone. That even people that haven't seen it, they're like, I know all about that. Like it's
They
just
know all about it. Yeah. When
right.
I
You just
actually got the Final Destination series, I was doing this job, and it was a part-time job, but it was good money. And I got the film, and I went to my bosses, and I was like, "Hey, I just got this movie series, Final Destination," and they were like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, but I've got to go for like 3 months, and we're gonna film down in New Orleans. I was just wondering if you'll hold my job for me, so when I get back, I'll have something to do." And they were like, "Absolutely not. No, but go and do this movie. You have to be in the Final Destination. You have to go do that. I mean, this job, whatever this job, but you have to do that." But no, we're not going to hold your fucking job. No way, dude. No way. Yeah. So thanks, guys. I guess I was happy with their enthusiasm, but not so happy when I got back. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Crazies too. That is such an insane movie too. Like the whole premise of that, like this small town life. You've got like everybody knows everybody, and then all of a sudden, like people start acting real weird. Nobody knows what's going on, and then you find out they're being quarantined in this little town, and like, I think it's been a while since I've seen it, but was it something in the water? It was like
there was a military craft that crashed into the swamp, and that's where the town got its water from. And I believe that's why it got out. I don't think it was airborne. Yeah, because everybody would have had it. But I mean, essentially, it's a zombie film, And that's also when we filmed that. That was right when Walking Dead was taking off. I mean, I was also auditioning for that at the time, like the first season or something like that, and. It's a remake of a Romero movie. I'm a huge Romero fan. Romero made the original Crazies. And personally, if you haven't, have you seen the original?
I might have. I've seen a lot of Romero films. I don't remember if I've seen the original. I feel like I have, but if I can't recollect it completely.
So he made Dawn of the Dead, and then the movie studios were like, "Here's $1 million for 3 new movies. Here's $1 million for each movie. Here you go, $3 million." And he went and made Night Riders, The Crazies, and Maniac Cop. I think that's the 3 that he made, and they're awesome. They're all weird. They're all kind of low budget. I mean, George Romero could make $1 million go just centuries wide. And, he really made the most out of it. And it's much more psychedelic. The people aren't zombies so much as they're the crazies. And, their psychosis is what's driven them to kill people and things like that. Now, for popular entertainment, veins popping out and kind of, murderous townsfolk that were your neighbors. That's a zombie trope that lots of people like, and I totally understand that. I kind of miss some of the stuff from the original in the one that we made, because I thought it was just kind of more interesting to have the personalities of the people. I made one of the first movies I ever made was called The Signal, and it's all about this signal that transmits out, and people kind of start seeing and reacting to things that they fear and desire. And it's actually their personalities are still there. It still leads to murder and chaos and all those things. But when they kind of told me they wanted to be silent and you're a killer and you're, all those things, I was like, all right, I think this is a little bit of a missed opportunity. But I still love the movie. It was my first chance to get to work with the great Tim Oliphant, who I later got to work with in Justified. And, he was there in Perry, Georgia when we were filming. And then we went out to Iowa and finished filming it. And yeah, man, I mean, that was, wow, long time ago. A lot of night shoots, man, a lot of shooting at night. So kind of living that zombie vampire life.
Yeah. And yeah, I definitely, I love George A. Romero. He's like one of my favorite directors of all time. I love all the movies he even did later on. I really found them very interesting, like Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead. Yeah, they were all like, he
Land
was
of the
barely.
Dead is where it kind of tops out for me. I've seen all of his movies, and I appreciate George for what he is. But when we kind of got to the horseback riding zombie, and like again
Yeah.
in what is it, Diary of the Dead? They're making the film. Is that the one that yeah? And what's the very last one? The last one is
Survival of the Dead.
is that it? Yeah. So in Diary, you get introduced to those National Guardsmen that come on the bus, and they steal everything from the kids and all. But you had such a cool setup when they went into the warehouse, and it was all those like Black Panther survivalists. Like that's the movie I wanted to see. Not a bunch of shit-heel National Guardsmen that end up going to this island to survive themselves. But it is a great George Romero trope that he follows around, the lowest common denominator, somebody that's racist or that's, horribly in Land of the Dead, they're still talking about money. I don't understand how $1 million is worth anything in the world of the dead, but in fairness to George, most of his stuff is all a metaphor for something else. It's all talking about modern day life, and materialism is a huge aspect of his thing. And he obviously was intellectual and hated rednecks and loves poking at redneck. In Night of the Living Dead, it's rednecks that kills the hero, and the biker dummies that get in Dawn of the Dead, and it's all that kind of great stuff. So as much as the movies in the later part of his career end up a little wonky, a little uneven, they're still fun to watch, and you gotta love Romero for who he is. The man started out with Mr. Rogers and ends up being a cultural icon. I've actually been to the Pittsburgh Heinz Museum, and they've got a whole exhibit on George's stuff, where he really made his living and all that. And that kind of felt like you had to nod your hat to it. This is like, you're the man, George. I've followed you for a long time. So it was an honor to be in a movie of his, that was at least based on one of his original ideas. I was really hoping to meet him, but I don't think he ever showed up. I think he just took the paycheck and moved on,
Right. Yeah, he's definitely I feel like the godfather of the zombies that we know today.
Totally.
Because I know there's a lot of, because I know like they had zombies kind of going on prior to that, but they were like the Haiti, like slave
white zombie, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And that's all great. That's more authentic in its way, but at the same time, he is the creator of what we think of as the modern zombie. He had real opinions about fast zombies and, all that kind of stuff. If you get a chance, there's a book that's kind of based on some of his writings with a ghostwriter. I think it's called The Living Dead. And it's huge. It's a big, but it's a fun read. If you already like George Romero, it's a fun read to get back into that world and kind of see what things are like 20, 30 years down the pipeline, which I always enjoy. I always enjoy, like, okay, this is when it happened. And then, like Day of the Dead is about what, like a year after everything's collapsed, or maybe more, maybe 2, but not long. Dawn of the Dead is really it's getting bad. Like things are falling apart and we need to get out of here quickly. And then the rest of the movies, of course, Diary of the Dead, it pops up. But by that last one, Survival Dead, and certainly Land of the Dead, it is the Land of the Dead. So, all credit to George. Gotta love him, man. Gotta love him.
Heck yeah. So that kind of segues into my next question. So if you found yourself like all of a sudden there's an apocalyptic event, or like, crap hits the fan like zombies, if you had to pack only 5 items, what would you pack in your bag?
Wow. Well, that's interesting. I would pack the medical kit that I keep in my car for roadside emergencies. I'd pack my Glock for the internet. I am very well armed. So I'd probably carry one of my smaller Now see, it's a hint between, do you want a blade, like a good blade, or do you want like a pocket knife? You know, do you want like a good, something to open cans, you know? So I probably, if I'm gonna have a gun, should just have a decent survival knife with a can opener on it, like a multi-tool or something like that.
Right.
So I guess that's three. I don't know. I'd take a bunch of Cliff Bars. Like, can I take
There you go.
a box of Cliff Bars, so I've at least got enough for
Yeah.
some food every day? And yeah, I guess. I mean, I'm gonna just be really old school, and I guess I should take like a decent canteen of water, but somewhere in there, I'm keeping an extra pair of socks and underwear. I don't know if those just, I'll put those on over my own clothes, because man, an extra pair of socks when you're out there and an extra pair of underwear will make your apocalypse a whole different experience, I'm sure.
Yeah, for you viewers out there, take that advice.
Telling you, man, when you go hiking and at the end of the day you put on a clean pair of socks, your world is so much better. So yeah, I assume it's got to be that way if you're hiking along the LA River, keeping slavers and zombies at bay. So
Right. Oh man. So kind of a
you thought
good
I hadn't
question.
thought about those questions before, right? Yeah, you thought who in this world now has not already thought about what goes in your bug out bag? You know, I mean, even if it's just an intellectual exercise, everybody's kind of like, all right, who would I go get? And for the most part, I wouldn't leave the house. I would blockade. I live on the second story. I already know where I'd park the cars to block the driveway. I've got a good field of fire. I'm staying here. Even with the power out, we're going to be good for a while. Let everybody else go roaming for a while. You come to me, and, you know, I mean, if I have to go gather neighbors or, you know, steal their resources, then I guess I'll just have to do that.
Right. I live out in the middle of the country. Like, I would just like set up some sort of perimeter, but I feel like I won't be bothered as much out here.
Not
So
to begin with, but later.
yeah,
Later.
yeah, they'll trickle down.
They'll get out eventually.
So when you're preparing for shooting a scene, what gets you into character?
Oh wow, a lot of things. I mean, it really depends. If I mean, before I ever go to set, obviously you need to have read and reread and read your script and figure out where you belong, just like any play. I'm not a huge one for coming up with vast histories for my characters unless it's really something that I think will be helpful. You really do need to know kind of where you come from and where you're going, but you know, I don't need to know my sister's names and things like that. But, you know, I mean, if I was involved in a role or a process that sort of thing would be helpful, and other actors were certainly invested in that, I can go to that direction too. A lot of things, I mean, that's the kind of thing that you don't want to be thinking about your lines at all. Before I did a fairly large monologue in Godless, I mean, I had worked on that for over a month, maybe a month and a couple weeks, so that when it got down to it and I rode up on a horse and all those people are there and I've got to literally walk up to the camera and get right up in it, and there are people outside the shot, and you've got to deliver all this complicated, you know, information about directions and where somebody might have gone and over the Pecos River and blah, blah, blah. And it was like water. It just came right out of me, and it was right there, and I didn't have to think about it. And that is a really strong place to be in your preparation. And obviously you can't always be that way in something like television. Sometimes they throw things at you, or there are new lines or new scenes, but that is you need to not be thinking about what your lines are. That's certainly it. And the other parts are really just being able to be physically prepared, physically present. You know what's happening today. You know, we're going to get to this first. And it's nice to know the order of things so you can kind of ready yourself to go. I'm not a huge one for, what people wrongly call them anyways, method acting, but in the way of staying in a psychological state for as long as I need to be there, because it's not really very reliable. At least that's what I've found. Being able to do physical things that help trigger something over and over, because it's like stunt work. It's not about doing a stunt once. It's about doing it again and again and again. And that's the whole thing with the scene. Well, we shot it, but it's the long shot. Now we need the medium shot. Now we need your close up. Now we need to do coverage, and you need to be able to give actors the same thing, if at all possible, that you were doing when the camera was on you. You know, you want to give them the proper respect and landscape to be able to offer, and they're part of the performance. They're part of the scene. So I think that kind of respect, I mean, you know, don't show up after a long night out if at all possible. You know, those are the kind of things that really seem to go with people that have either problems or privileges, as I like to say. They've got a problem when they're coming into the production, or they have the privilege of being able to get away with something. And I don't really find that to be very commendable. I don't really want to be known for that. And I don't think I am. That's what professionalism really is. And I did a series on HBO called Sharp Objects, and Amy Adams, it is maybe one of the most professional people I've ever worked with, in the way that her entire, you know, with somebody that's the star of the show and they're the producer of the show, when you're doing your lines to them and they're doing the coverage on that person, you know, they're doing their best performance. And then often with bigger stars, the camera will flip around and now it's your turn, and that star will leave and somebody will come on and read their lines and do the scene for them because that person's too busy or too big or got something else going on. Amy never did that. Never. She was there for every single shot. It obviously meant the world to her, and I think it really shows up on screen. And I can say in things like Bones, when I did that, you know, that kind of, you know, now that we've got the stars coverage, now it's on me. They just left for the day, you know, and that was kind of a little disconcerting. And one of those things where you're like, all right, well, I know you're the big guy, but, you know, thanks for, you know, bailing out right for the moment. But hey, man, you know, it's their series, it's their money. So, you know, when you've been there for years and years and years, I totally understand why sometimes that might happen. Or you get a little tired of a new guest star or two or three every single episode. But, you know, that's the kind of dedication and commitment that I think really shows up on screen. And helps elevate the entire project for even the smaller actors when, you know, dealing with a bigger star. When it comes their time and that person hangs out, I think it really propels it to a different level, you know. So I don't know if that answered your question, but there are a lot of things that we do.
Yeah.
But one of my big ones is definitely physical preparation, so that when the cameras are rolling, I'm where I need to be, both mentally and physically, but not necessarily staying in this hyper mental state, which I don't really find very reliable. Like I said, it's just not there sometimes. You know, you're really ready to get it, and your brain just, you know, if you're thinking dead puppies, try to cry, then you're not really present. And that's not going to be, you know, there at your fingertips. You know, it's not going to be truth, and it's not going to be, and the camera knows. I think.
Yeah, no, that answered my question for sure. No, that's good. So
Then my job here is done.
So what first got you into horror?
Wow. You know, I had been a theater actor for most of my life, and a bunch of friends, the movie I mentioned earlier, The Signal, a bunch of friends of mine were in the theater community in Atlanta, Georgia, and I had literally directed several of the so that movie had 3 directors, Dan Bush, David Bruckner, and Jacob Gentry, all of which have filmed other horror movies since then. And we were a very tight community. We had all done theater together. We also there was a what would you call it? A community around this project called the Dailies, which it would be this time everybody made a movie based off of the title of a Ween song, or everybody made a movie based on this picture, and it's like somebody vaguely behind some curtains and whatever. And they were all short films, and it was whatever you could make for nothing and with the people around you and all that kind of thing. And the whole point was just to grow, to expand. And we had made a movie that Jacob Gentry made a movie called Last Goodbye, which brought in more money than many people had seen. But in getting that $1 million or whatever it was, several $1 million, the Hollywood brought in all these stars' children. So that was going to be the hook. This is like Faye Dunaway's kid and Anthony Quinn's son and Clementine Ford, who is Sybil Shepherd's daughter, and all these things. And many of these people are super nice. Andy Garcia's daughter, and really nice people. But we in Atlanta filled up the characters all around them, and the movie didn't go anywhere. The apple, the tree, wherever it falls. And that is not saying that none of those people are talented. It is simply the way of the business, that people were like, well, and we even got Faye Dunaway in the movie, and like David Carradine is in the movie. But one of the investors, so, it's got all the cred that a movie should have, but it was a drama. It wasn't really it was a human drama, less of any kind of horror genre or whatever. But when the movie was done, Hollywood left, and one investor hung out and gave these guys $50,000. And they were making something called an Exquisite Corpse movie, where Dave made part of a movie and then passed it off to Dan, and Dan made his part of the movie and then passed it off to Jacob. And then Jacob, with Alex Montlaw, the producer, his producing partner at the time, came to them and was like, hey, I could make my movie, or let's just combine all our efforts and we'll have 3 directors and we'll have 3 parts of one big Exquisite Corpse movie. And that's what The Signal became. And we used that $50,000 to make this movie. And like, I got like $600 for 12 days of shooting and like a point in the movie, which I'd never even heard of, like, what does that mean? You're going to give me a point in your movie if it succeeds. And, we're all living in Atlanta and just we're just doing a movie with our friends. And to me, it seemed like the best deal ever, dude. I'm going to get paid to act, and you're going to give me like $50 a day almost. And, I get fed and all those things. Yeah. And we made the movie, and it was a lot of fun. It was really hard, and all sorts of, crazy things happened. And then it was about a year of post and, getting it out there and trying to do this. I remember doing ADR in somebody's car, driving around to do, some extra vocal stuff. And we submitted the movie to all sorts of, sorry, I know this story goes on a little bit, but it's definitely worth the background. We submitted it to a lot of festivals. No festivals took it except Sundance. And that was just mind-blowing to us when we found out that we got into Sundance. And we got drunk for about 2 days. And then we started figuring out, like, are we going to go to Sundance? What are we doing? And of course, they hadn't even really finished the full product of the movie yet. And literally, the first time I saw our movie was in Park City, Utah, at the first midnight showing at the Egyptian of the Sundance Film Festival in 2006. And is that right? Yeah, 2006. Or was it 2007? We made it in 6 and it came out in 7. That's right. That's when it was 2007. So sorry about that. And within we hadn't seen the movie and we're all excited, but at the same time, theater's packed and like MC Hammer is behind me. And, you're just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And within the first 20 minutes, people were leaving the movie theater, and we were like, "Oh, they hate it. They hate it," and they were leaving to try and buy the movie. And by the morning, by 4 a.m. ish, the movie had been sold for $2.6 million. And that just kind of changed things. I mean, I went home and I was literally like laying bricks for my roommate or something like that. And I was like, I have a college degree. I'm really good at what I do. I just sold a movie for like all this money. Something's got to change, right? And so I started looking more into auditioning for films and into television. And then my good friend Greg Bishop, who we made our movie The Other Side and Dance of the Dead, and it just kind of got rolling. And a year after The Signal had come out at Sundance, the day it came out in theaters, in limited theaters around the US, and we were seeing it in Atlanta for the first time, was the day that I got Final Destination. And that really was one of those just synchronistic things that I was like, well, this is what I should probably go after, you know? And so I should continue to follow this trail of both horror and TV and film, because, you know, sometimes things are a little nebulous about what the universe wants you to do. And it can feel like that a lot. But sometimes in your life, it very clearly is kind of going, this is it. And that was definitely one of those moments. And that's definitely sealed me in with doing movies like VHS Viral with Greg Bishop and Siren with him and David Bruckner. And, you know, as much Final Destination was a huge thing. I mean, Final Destination literally eventually paid for me to move to Los Angeles. I mean, it really was one of these things that kind of changed my life. But I had to make those decisions to be a young, hungry actor and to go after, you know, to get paid almost nothing and go and do this movie with my friends. And that's how a lot of things start. And doing a horror movie, we were like, hey, we've got $50,000. If we make $51,000 out of this, we win. We'll just make another movie with $51,000. But, you know, we were really lucky, and obviously, you know, we got a significant amount more than that, and it kind of set a lot of people off on their careers. And you could not, as is the case with many, you could not make that movie now in Atlanta. The crews are too busy making real movies, making real television shows. At the time, talent, like on-screen talent, was actually a lot more affordable, and you know, people helping out with cameras and sound and all that kind of thing. They were almost free. I mean, they were doing it for almost nothing. And now those people are the ones with the union, and, you know, they're really in high demand, and they're going from project to project. And, you know, sometimes I look back and go, man, maybe I should have been a gaffer. I would have had a lot of more job security if I had done that. But nah, you know, find your talent, stick with it, man. So there you go.
Awesome. No, I'm glad that propelled you forward, and things are looking up. I came from a theater background. I did theater outside of school in high school, and I was like an extra in like my friend's independent film back in like 2007, and then recently, because, you know, I do a lot of interviews and I do a lot of videos, I linked up with a gentleman named Vincent DeSanti. He released this fan film called Never Hike Alone, and it's a Friday the 13th movie.
Oh, cool.
So I went and just worked on his set for part 2 of that, and got to work with like one of my like horror icon, like final guys of like my whole life. I was like, I had to like keep my fanboy side of me inside. I was like trying to keep it cool on the outside, but Tom Matthews.
Wow. No, yeah.
Yeah, I got to hang out with him all day and work with him, and it was just like a dream come true. I was like, is this really happening right now? Like,
yeah. I mean, that happens sometimes, and it's one of the most wonderful, it can be a wonderful part, especially if that person ends up not being, a total break of what you hope that they will be. Because I've worked with some great stars, and, I turned around one day on Justified, and, there was Peter Weller, RoboCop, or Buckaroo Banzai was my director for the day. And you're like, oh, yeah, okay, just keep it in. You're doing great, man. And I've worked with Peter twice, and he's just a Looney Tune, but one of the best guys and so much fun to work with. And most stars, that I would be excited about have been really fun to work with a few exceptions. But for the most part, it's always been a pretty positive experience. And especially if you get a little bit more time than just that day, or if you're lucky to be able to have just, some interpersonal time, they're just as human as you are. They've got their own worries and their own problems. And, once you kind of get past, like I met John Hawkes, and I did a pilot that ended up not going anywhere, but Winter's Bone had just come out, and I was a huge fan of his from Deadwood and all this kind of thing. But when I brought up Winter's Bone, which was this little movie that had kind of come out in artistic theaters and just had this, this young starlet that nobody had heard of, Jennifer Lawrence, and, John Hawkes was in this movie, and all of a sudden he was totally ready to talk about anything else in his life, anything at all, that he knew that you had seen something that he really prized, and that's definitely a great memory, and one of those wonderful things about working with people that you admire, that it never gets old hearing that something that meant a lot to you means a lot to somebody else too. At least not in my experience. I've been at conventions before, like horror conventions, and people will come up and go, "Are you Justin Welborn?" And you're like, "I don't know. Am I? I guess I am." They're like, "I love Justified so much. Carl is one of my favorite characters, and I have a ring with a big C on it." And you're just like, "Oh God, I thought you were going to beat me up or something like that." And they just effusively love you for something that, I've met people over in Europe that have come up to my table, and they just want to say something about one of the movies or the TV shows that you've done, and to me, that never gets old. But then again, I'm not being chased by paparazzi or anything. So I guess, individually, I can see how that would get overwhelming. But stories between, individual human beings, it can mean a lot,
Yeah. There's been a couple of like actors that I've met that were just so down to earth and just really nice to talk to. And then I ended up, some of them I've actually talked to, on Instagram a little bit more.
Right.
One of them was actually in the same movie as you, The Crazies, Brett Wagner.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He was very down to earth when I talked to him, and he was telling me about how his wife was from Washington and like all kinds of stuff. And I was like, this is really nice, like getting to actually just chat and like not feel like,
it's really funny because I hear from a lot of people that like down to earth. They're so relieved that somebody is down to earth. Dude, actors live in rejection all the time. We are the most healed down people. I mean, you have faced rejection and poverty, and you've had a zillion jobs that you never wanted to do just to stay alive. And I mean, we are the earth. We're already of the earth. It is the bigger start when you do begin to kind of lift and separate from the herd. That's when it can get really different, because your perspective really changes. You don't have to go and buy your groceries, or you have people that go and do things for you. So you kind of are becoming, you have to separate for your own safety and sanity and things like that. But, most actors that I talk to, we can be as full of shit as anybody, but for the most part, it's really down to earth people, because we've had to be. We've done everything that everybody else has done. And if you know our name, or a little bit of our work, that's so much icing on the cake, and we are deeply appreciative of fans and of the genres. I mean, I don't know anybody that watches more movies than actors. you know,
Yeah.
except maybe just horror fans in general. Horror fans will watch a lot of movies and will know a lot of sequels and even things that I watch a lot of horror, but man, they will know 10 times more than even I will. It's like they don't watch anything else, but you know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, which kind of segues me into do you have a favorite horror movie?
Do I have a, yeah, that's like your favorite book, you know? I mean, they're the big ones that like scared your life away, because I even consider like Jaws. Jaws is an adventure movie, but Jaws still keeps me out of anything more than like waist deep water, you know? So
Yeah.
that scarred me. The Exorcist kind of scarred me into young an age. You know, there are things like that. My dad let me watch Psycho 2 when I was too young to watch it. But it's not a great movie. You know, I've kind of gone through, I'll name some that are like The Lost Boys. Shit, man,
yeah.
I've been wearing an overcoat ever since that movie. So, Near Dark is my very favorite vampire movie because it's got basically the best of the cast of Aliens, you know, for obvious reasons. I just absolutely adore that movie because it's such an indie movie with a new director at the time and, you know, some Lance Henriksen. I mean, how can you get better than Lance at the idea of doing a horror movie? You're going to be a vampire that used to, you know, fight for the Confederacy and just fucking great. I will say, but instead of like just favorite, because those are all like favorite movies, and I'm not sure that I come back to some. The latest movie I watched was Barbarian. And that really disturbed me in the best kind of way, you know, where I was just like, oh, it's this kind of movie. Oh, no. Oh, my God. He squished his head. I just didn't see things coming. And one of the best parts about horror movies is when they really surprise you. You know, like I saw Smile, and it's a decent movie. It's scary. It's got all the right beats. It's also got a weird kind of, you know, naked tall woman in it, and, you know, evil witchy thing or whatever it is. But it kind of hit the beats, and none of the performances were subpar. It just was what it was. But like Barbarian blew me away in the way that like I didn't expect this to happen. I didn't know what was going to happen. I was truly freaked out. By the end of the movie, I still didn't. When it ended, and I went, whew, that's a movie, man. That's a movie. So I will definitely say that for the moment, that was my most recent horror movie that it just really, really blew me away. So
yeah. No, awesome. Which,
but also I'm a big John Carpenter fan. John Carpenter is just the man, and so everything from, you know, I'm probably a bigger fan of The Thing than most people. That's one of the just formative movies that, even as a little kid, that you just sent you into science fiction and sent you into fantasy and into body horror and into Cthulhu and all these different things. So that's, you know, one of those formative movies. But I always like to say and think about what the movies are that are happening now. You know, it's always, you know, great. My friend Dave Bruckner just came out with his new Hellraiser on Hulu, and that's terrific. And he made The Night House and The Ritual and all those. He's just so good at what he does. I made a movie called Broadcast Signal Intrusion that it's not your typical horror film. And it is a psychological horror film, which is a totally different kind of genre than most of your, you know, kind of stabby movies. So, yeah, man, there's just so many out there that are worthwhile. So I know I added a few there, but it was worth it.
Oh yeah, no, that's good. Like The Ritual, that was the one where the guys go hiking, all the friends go hiking.
Yeah,
right?
based off the book. Yeah. And I don't want to give anything away. People should see The Ritual because it's really well shot. There, you know, one of the main actors, you know, I mean, he's doing amazing work out there. He was in Shaun of the Dead, and now he's in that. And
I know exactly what you're talking
Yeah, I'm sure you do. But the ritual is just great. They go into the woods and they kind of find something beyond what you would think, like, oh, it's just a monster, or oh, it's a witch. It's kind of something ancient and old that they have come upon. And that to me is always interesting, that you have crossed over what was your sorrow or your grief or your problems, and now you're in a world that is actually like much older, and in that kind of Lovecraftian way of, it just doesn't care about you at all. Fear of the unknown is always really, really interesting.
Yeah, no, that was a really good film. I watched that on Netflix, and I really loved just the levels of emotion and layers between the friends, and like some of their back history. There was a lot of stuff going on too beyond.
That's what you think the whole movie is. I mean, the movie takes a turn in the way that you're like, I mean, of course it's a horror film, but it really takes a turn. It is those earlier established relationships that end up being so vital to how they end up attempting to survive later on, and that's the core of the film.
Yeah, for sure. I just have a few more questions for you. I'll try not to keep you too long.
No worries.
If you could work with any director, living or deceased, who would you want to work with?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a hard one, man. Any particular director? I mean, you just jump into like Scorsese land. Can you, are you allowed? I mean, I've got friends that made Wolf of Wall Street and things like that, so it's totally possible, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, I love a good gangster film. That would be. It's so different than my normal genre. There are all sorts of horror that, like The Last of Us, of course, like millions of other people. I'm all caught up into it, and would love to work with the different directors that are working on that. I'd kind of like to continue. I love working with my friends. Greg Bishop, David Bruckner, Jacob Gentry, Dan Bush, these people I grew up with and have done, they are going to be some of the people that you're going to need to keep looking out for them, because they really do startlingly produce material that is new and is interesting. And, there's just nothing like knowing somebody. And look, man, this is how so many relate. I mean, Robert De Niro is the star he is because of Scorsese. Because they had a friendship and they connected like that, and one fed off the other and things grew. And so those relations, I mean, look at Judd Apatow and his whole crew of people from Freaks and Geeks and, all of that. They've all gone on to huge different careers and doing their own thing, but they knew one another and could feed off of that. And there's something really special about that, rather than simply, teleporting into the world of Scorsese, as me, or, into this amazing world that suddenly I'm in a Judd Apatow movie. And of course you do that stuff, but, I don't know them any more than anybody else. So I'd love to keep making movies with my friends and making them bigger and better and weirder and more interesting. And I mean, I honestly do not care if I play the old cantankerous gas station attendant, like in Cabin in the Woods, and, that it's fine. You get to work with your friends, you get to go play. Like, the whole reason you started out doing this stuff is because it was play, because it's fun. And if you get paid for the thing that you like to do and is fun, all the better.
Yeah, heck yeah. No, nothing better than getting to do things with your friends and do stuff that you're passionate about. That's for sure.
Especially if they're already talented, they're already in that world, they're already, I mean, all of us, all the people I just named are all carving careers. We're all still out there hustling, trying to make it happen. And there's nothing like that hunger. All of those people are professionally involved in the industry. But we're all still at this place where it's, they're still leaping off points. Nobody's made this major motion picture, but everybody's made a movie. Everybody's made many movies. And so it's, I'm always looking forward to seeing what they do next. What we get to do next.
Yeah. So I guess because you kind of answered it in this last question, but I was going to ask you, is there any kind of role that you've always wanted to play but never been cast for?
In The Signal, I got to actually play a good guy. I don't play a lot of good guys. There are a whole lot of roles that would really be fun to play that are, less antagonistic and a little more sympathetic. I really want to do a movie in swords and armor. How about that? I'll just say a genre rather than like a role, but like put me in some plate mail and give me a shield and a sword, because I already know how to use those things, and it would be a lot of fun to, get on a horse and do some stuff like that. So, a movie like The King or Outlaw King, or, a period piece or fantasy movie, something like that would be mind blowing. I haven't had an opportunity to do that, so that would be really a blast.
Yeah, well, I'm sure someday it'll happen. I really hope that you get the chance to do that.
Calling all fantasy directors.
Right. So just a few more. What is, if you had to, I mean, I have a lot of questions, like a hypothetical question. If you had to choose, what movie do you think is very underrated that more people should know about?
Oh, wow. That's a really tough one. Yeah. An underrated movie that more people should know about. I mean, there's so many independent films like that really came from nowhere. I do a podcast for SiriusXM and called Cargo Cult, and we've been talking about a lot of movies from 1973, so 50-year-old movies, these movies that are just now turning half a century old. And I really love going back and watching these movies like Omega Man and Soylent Green, these things where Charlton Heston keeps his shirt off for a good amount of time, they're so good. And a lot of people are like, oh, I already know what it's about. Nah, man, go and watch that movie and enjoy the little things of where movies came from. When you study, who the guy that did the soundtrack for Omega Man ended up doing the soundtrack for Phantasm. There are connections between Omega Man and Phantasm. You see where the Bruno Segal, Katie Segal's father, directed that movie. There's something just really different about somebody that made TV for a living, like Bruno did, and then Richard Fleischer, who made Soylent Green, which the world building in Soylent Green is so much fun. It's all about overpopulation and a warming planet and fewer resources and rioting. And you're kind of going, that seems really slightly familiar as to little, and the movie actually, I totally didn't know this until the other day. Soylent Green takes place in 2022. So just last year, I guess we got by somehow. So I would definitely say go back and watch some of these movies that really, we know Charlton Heston from things like Planet of the Apes, but what are these other disaster movies or post-apocalypse? Where does The Last of Us come from? Where, like we were talking about Romero, the founder of zombies, go and see things like, last night, here's a good one, Undead, the Australian film. Such a good zombie movie. And it's right out of the kind of Peter Jackson, New Zealand, Australia, gore fest that Dead Again, is along those movie lines. It's just super gory and weird. And is it about zombies or is it about aliens? Look that stuff up. Where do they come from? Go back and watch movies that are 20, 30, 40, 50 years old that either you haven't seen or you haven't seen in a long time, because a lot of times when you did see it, it was on this little itty bitty screen, TV screen, when you VHS watched it, or you first got it on a CD-ROM or a DVD. And now we, like 56-inch television. And, my friend's got an 80-inch television. You're basically at the movies. You get to watch this thing in this just gigantic format that it's going to be transforming the experience for you. Even if you just stream it off your phone onto your television, it'll be a totally different experience than when you saw it on the on the smaller screen. So I would say go back and watch some of the things that if you like post-apocalyptic or dystopian or horror movies, go back and watch the original Zombie. Go back and watch White Zombie. Go see where these things are from. Go see Bride of Frankenstein. Find it. Creature from the Black Lagoon. Those old Universal movies that people are like, oh, yeah. If you're a horror fan and you haven't seen those movies, you don't have your merit badge yet. You haven't sat through Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Mummy, and Creature from the Black Lagoon. You need to go get that merit badge, man. You need to go watch that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. I always love going back and watching like films from like way back. I haven't seen like Soylent Green or anything like that. That sounds like one I definitely should write down. Especially
check it out, man. It's really great. And then because it was Planet of the Apes, and then he made Omega Man, which is based off of Richard Matheson's book I Am Legend, which eventually Will Smith made the remake of. Vincent Price made the original one, The Last Man on Earth, which is kind of wonderful in its horrible way. But both Omega Man and Last Man on Earth take place in Los Angeles, and it's kind of weird that Will Smith made it New York. It kind it works how it works, but I Am Legend is a great. Many of these things that people made movies of 50 years ago, often and even now, Last of Us is a video game. That's where the source material is. All the source material 50 years ago are from short stories and novels. That's it. We're watching whole genres of films. A Marvel universe is comic books. Well, that's the source material that we're getting that stuff from. Harry Potter. Well, she wrote those books, and that's where we get. So it's evolving what we're getting better and better access to and source material from. But yeah, go back and see where things are from. And if you haven't seen Soylent Green, I'm not going to tell you that it's like the best movie in the world, because it's not. But it is one of these things that is a seed of so many other films. And I think you'll see that when you watch it. It's also the last film that Edward G. Robinson was in. He actually died 12 days after the movie was made. And there's a great scene in it where he volunteers to go to a government-run suicide clinic. And it's one of the best scenes in the movie. And it's kind of beautiful to watch a great American actor go through the process of dying when he actually knew he was dying, where everybody on that set knew he was dying, and that he literally died 12 days after the making of the film. There's something really special in knowing that and then watching the film. Or vice versa, watch the film and find out about it. I love learning about how the movie was made when I'm watching a movie or after I've watched it. There's just, you'll find those connections and like, oh, that's it. Because Edward G. Robinson and Charlton Heston made 10 Commandments together, and that was the big movie. And then they made this little itty bitty dystopian sci-fi, just weird. And it's the last movie that Ed and Charlie got to make together, than anybody got to make with Ed. So yeah, it's pretty neat.
Awesome. No, that's awesome. Let's see. So going back a little bit darker here, since you're in a movie about people dying, crazy deaths.
Which one?
Oh God. Yeah, you're right. I'm kind of saying something really broad. What, in your opinion, would be the worst way to die?
Drowning. Fire. Fire's pretty bad too. Just burning to death, I can't imagine would be, breathing in fire would be terrible. But I just recently read Cormac McCarthy's 2 newest novels. And Stella Morris is the companion one of The Passenger. He hasn't written books in many years. And there's a long description of drowning in that book that really, really clinical and really put me off the idea. If it ever occurred to me, that would not be how it went, because I was that's pretty awful. Although, once again, just to call back to Jaws, being eaten by anything is, of course, way low on my list. Sharks, crocodiles, anything devouring me, I think would pretty much just suck. But fire, drowning, being eaten, those are pretty much the top ones, I think. I'm sure somebody else could come up with something, things falling off you and slow and rotting death, I'm sure would be horrible, but yeah, I'm gonna go with those.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, I've always been like, no drowning, no like being buried alive or suffocating, or like,
right. Yeah.
And definitely when you talk about it being eaten, like I always had like this fear of like being eaten by like an anaconda or something.
Yeah, snakes are way low on my favorite list of anything. So yeah, being eaten by a snake is pretty low, man. Although I will read any article about somebody being eaten or attacked by a shark or a snake or a crocodile I'll read it all. I'm a complete voyeur for I'll rubberneck the hell out of that kind of news story. But yeah, when you occasionally get one of those stories like from the Philippines and some small grandmother was eaten in a field by an anaconda, you're like, wait a minute, how big was she? How did that happen? Oh God, that snake totally got her. I'm amazed it hasn't happened more, down in Florida where everything else happens. So
I know, and when we're talking about that, I just totally pictured. Have you ever seen Lake Placid?
Of course, that's one of my favorite. I mean, one of my favorite crocodile, alligator. Of course, alligator was also one of those kind of scarring movies. There's a scene where the kids walk this other kid off the plank in a swimming pool and the alligator's down there and it like chomps the kid. That was slightly scarring as a child. But Lake Placid, I mean, geez, when when she feeds it the cow and and of course she of course like it ate her husband and she's not really all that broken up about it. Betty White, she's amazing in that film, and it's also got such just really fun actors in it. While it's a horror action sort of film, it's a movie about a crocodile in a fucking New England lake. It's fun. So yeah, that's a great movie.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was picturing, was like sweet old little Betty White.
Oh, who doesn't give a fuck? She's totally just, she like gets her husband eaten and is feeding it cows, and she totally knows what's going on. She's awesome. Yeah. R.I.P. Betty.
Yeah, she had a long life. That's for
sure. Dude, if you have not seen pictures of Betty White as a young hot lady, oof, go find the internet now. Go. She had an amazing career, and we always picture her from like Golden Girls and that kind of saucy, older lady, but she had a whole other. I mean, that's one of the great things about this career is that if you're lucky and you can stay in it, you'll have all sorts of different periods of time that you get to explore your art. So yeah. Weird little turn into Betty White land there, but I'm glad we took it.
Yeah, for sure. And hey, man, thank you so much for taking time to talk with me. And,
absolutely, man. It has been my privilege. I thank all the people who have spent any time either watching this whole thing or skipping it through. And yeah, keep doing what you're doing, man. I'm very appreciative of your efforts and love the horror community and the film watching community in general. So,
Heck yeah. And then just one little thing to close us out. What's next for you?
Well, I actually, in the horror genre, I have a horror podcast series that is coming out on iHeartRadio and through Blumhouse TV with my friend Dan Bush, one of the directors of The Signal and Psychopia films, called The Montauk Caves. And I play one of the lead roles in that. So while it's not a film, it is a whole series. That is a horror series, and I think it comes out like next month. So I'm really looking forward to that. We about a year ago, I believe, we recorded it, and it's been in post ever since then. And I got to work with Jonathan Tucker, who I also worked with on Justified. Like, we actually had scenes together and the whole stuff. And to get to work with him again, he's the lead in it, and to be in the same room for hours, and it's really wild to act simply through your voice rather than the camera being on you, but still have all of the stuff that you want, and have it out there, all recorded and able to get in the hands of audiences. So yeah, it's called The Montauk Caves, and it's going to be on iHeartRadio somewhere, everywhere. It's also through Blumhouse, which makes some of the best horror movies in the business. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. I hope people check it out.
Heck yeah. I'll definitely check that out for sure. That sounds like it'll be a good time.
It's going to be good, man. I just heard some rough cuts from it, and it's awesome.
Nice. And I'm next month I'm going to have a lot more. Well, I can't say downtime because we're having our baby is due next month.
Oh, wow. Mazel tov. Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. It's our first. We're really excited. It's a girl. But I'm a night owl, so I'll probably be up. I can check that out when I've got maybe a sliver of time before the baby's crying.
Sure. While you're trying to slowly either get back to sleep or stay awake, however it is. And congratulations on the kid, man. I can only say better you than me. There we go.
Oh man. Well, thank you so much again for hanging out with me and talking. I hope we can do it again sometime. That would be awesome to.
Sure, man. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, brother.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you, and have a killer rest of your night.
You too. Later.
Thanks. Later.